this might be a tough decision right now.
My
but
team
I'm
did
not just
absolutely
Some
garbage.
NFL games that were like,
Right.
whoa.
I actually don't
Had
understand.
a lot of mixed feelings. Welcome, Disgruntled. We have another guest here on the Legal Domains.
This is crooked. I'm too lazy to fix that. So, welcome guys. This is part 2 of my wildlife experience. And my dad, shout out to my dad, watched the previous episode. So he gave me even more wildlife stories from the adventures that we have. And he gave me a couple, so I'm going to be going over them. And one of them that he brought up was the one that I was actually going to tell, or one of the stories I was going to tell as well, which was a weird coincidence. I think I might have mentioned, no, I didn't mention it in the last podcast at all. So it was a weird coincidence that he mentioned this story, but it's going to be the first story that I start off this podcast. So the first story is leading back to the pond before we converted it into a fireplace. And he said that I was around 3 or 4 years old. I think it might have happened twice, but around 3 or 4, or when I was really young, in a toddler stage, I believe, that one like snowy day, I think, or it was during the winter. The other instance, I do remember it being snowy. But I was playing around the pond, I believe, and I fell in. And wait, hold on. I have to read the text because, again, I was a toddler. And I do not know the specific story, or obviously because I can't remember it. So I'm just going to read what my dad has sent me. And wait. Okay, so he says to me, Remember when you fell into the pond when you were like 3 in the winter? I ran down there from upstairs and threw you into a warm bath. So I guess, wait, hold on. I ran down there from upstairs and yeah. So basically, I fell in and he like rushed out. He grabbed me and stuff and he threw me into a bath. I believe, I don't know, I don't remember that story, but I do remember a story where I did fall in and then I was too scared to tell my parents or tell my dad that I fell in, because like I think I was not scared, but I was like, my dad told me previously, I guess the story, or he told me after that event when I was 3 or 4, after falling in, he was like, don't play around like the pond, don't do that, like you could get injured, you could get frostbite, you could drown, there's many other things that could happen. He was just like, stay away from there. And I was scared. I was like, oh crap, like I didn't listen to him. Not that I was scared that he would yell at me or like be mad at me by any mean, but it was just like, oh crap, I did it again, like how stupid of me. And then I was just like, I think I was a little older, but still young enough that I didn't really know what to do. So I was like, oh crap, I don't want him to see that I fell in again, or I felt embarrassed or whatever. And so I like fell in. I think it was only like my leg or something. I didn't like fall fully in, but it was enough to where I was like cold. I think maybe both feet, but it was enough where like my leg was soaked. I was like, oh crap. For some reason I hid behind a tree. And I was like, why am I hiding behind this tree? I'm freezing. And I think I don't know where my dad was. I think he was like somewhere in the backyard too. But like it was silent enough where like he didn't hear me fall in. So I'm recording the podcast.
Bitch!
I'm recording the podcast.
What's a podcast?
I'm recording the podcast.
What is that?
Your mom, fucking bitch. So I was hiding behind this tree, and I was like, all right, I should probably just go tell him or go back inside, because like I'm too cold for this. And meanwhile, it was like there was 3 or 4 inches of like snow. So I was just like in my like jacket and stuff, like hiding behind this tree and stuff. And I eventually like went down, and my dad just like he started laughing. He was like, you dummy. But I obviously wasn't out there long enough to get like frostbite or anything. Like it was literally like I like fell in a little bit just with my leg and then hit for like 2 seconds. I'm like, why am I hiding? And then I just like went back. I barely remember that. I don't remember too much of the details, but so I fell in the pond a couple of times, not to mention the times where I, accidentally playing on the pond, or not playing on the pond, but testing. If you remember last week's episode where I was telling you about the frog and how my friend and I would just skate across the pond, like it was, I don't think I mentioned how big exactly the pond was, but it wasn't too big. It was like probably 4 feet deep, maybe at the deepest. Maybe it was probably 3 or 4 feet deep at the most. It's about 3 or 4 feet deep, and it was probably 5 or 6 feet maybe in length, maybe a little bit longer. Maybe 5 to 7 feet in length, our width of it. So it wasn't too big of a pond. It was just like a little decoratory pond. Yeah, so it wasn't big at all. It's not like if I like fell in, I would have drowned easily. Like I could easily stood up for most of my life in the pond because it was pretty shallow as well. And so like there's been countless times where I was testing fate when I was like, I don't know how young, but like throughout when I lived there, throughout the pond's life, throughout the duration, like I would accidentally have my entire foot merge, and I was like, oh crap, because like I would be testing the ice to see how thick it was, and when I like put my foot in, I was testing too much with my foot. Like I would do this little thing where I'd be testing with my foot and keep like exerting weight, and sometimes I'd be exerting too much weight where like it was too much going forward where I couldn't stop myself before having my entire foot submerged in water. But yeah, that was kind of the story that I want to start it off with. But there's this other time where my dad and I think we were coming home from my Aunt Krista's house and Krista and Uncle Bill's house, and it was at nighttime, and we like drove at the end of our driveway and parked, and we had like our high beams on, and we saw 2 deer in our backyard. Like our driveway like went to our backyard, but it also like connected to our front yard too. Like it was on the side of the house, so you could like access the front and backyard via the driveway. But we went through the back entrance, or the back door entrance, or backyard entrance. So that's where most of the deer went, because there was kind of a trail we made. I think it was both a kind of a deer trail that they made on their own and kind of a path that we walked on a lot just to go into the woods in that area. I'll explain the layout of the backyard a little bit more. And again, there's pictures and videos all over my YouTube channel, so check out Kids Exploring and Kind Cube Adventures if you want to get a more in-depth visualization of our backyard. But so my dad and I drive up, we park, and then we see a buck and a female deer, I believe. And we were like looking at it, and this is where deer in headlights come from. It was when we drove up, it was literally still, like it was not moving at all. It was just frozen, and it wasn't like a crazy buck. It was like probably maybe 4 or 5 points at most. So it wasn't like too big of a buck. And my dumbass had the bright idea of trying to sneak up on it for God's know what reason. But I was trying to sneak up on it to get as close as I can. My dad was like, "What are you doing?" Like, not out loud, but he was like, get back. Like, don't do that. I was like probably like 13 or 14 at the time. I gave no fucks is another saying that said a lot by mostly me. But I basically gave no fucks, and I was like, I just wanted to get as close as I can, because like I just wanted to be as close as possible to the deer. But with bucks, bucks are aggressive, as most males within the animal kingdom. The males are mostly the aggressive ones. So, like, if that deer became aggressive for whatever reason, or thought that I was trying to attack it and became defensive in that way, or thought I was trying to fight it, because bucks usually fight. Look it up on YouTube, like buck fight or whatever. They're gnarly. They like butt antlers and stuff, and sometimes their antlers fall off, and that's why sometimes you just find random antlers in the woods. They're rare to find, but once you find them, it's awesome to find them. But that's why you see them in the woods occasionally, It's because of a buck fight, and or I think sometimes they scratch like their heads, and sometimes when they scratch like antlers fall off and stuff. But yeah, so they fighting that way to show dominance. So that buck could have charged me at any second. It could have had rabies. It didn't look like it had rabies. It looked like a perfectly healthy deer. So I wasn't worried about rabies, but it was just like that the buck could have charged me at any second just because it didn't know what I was and it didn't know my intentions. Like, I'm sure it probably interacted or seen a lot of people just because the deer and kind of the wildlife are adjusted to people, because it's not like it's residential. Oh, it is a residential area, but it's not like apartment buildings where it's like or apartment unit where our housing, I don't know what they're called. It's not like houses that are one building and then like separated in forests or whatever, or in sections. It's not like that. It's like a house and then a couple acres or maybe 3 or 4 acres apart is like another house. So the houses are pretty spread out. There's a decent amount of woods in between each house, depending on how close you want to be with the neighbor or how much you want your house to be seen. But most people had a lot of woods, but so that created like a lot of wildlife, and which is why I'm telling you these stories and events. But yeah, there's a lot of wildlife, and they see people a lot. It's not like they come up to you. It's not like a deer is going to come up to you and start eating from your hand. It's not that domesticated of like wildlife, but they've seen a lot of people and they're used to seeing people. So it's kind of half and half. So like the deer were used to us in a way where it's, one, stuck in headlights, two, they're like, all right, this is just like a person. But the deer, the buck, probably would have charged me, and due to having the other female there as well for protections and showing dominance. So yeah, I kind of got lucky there, and I'm glad my dad said something, and he was just like, what are you doing? Like, you fucking dumbass. He didn't say that. He didn't say fucking dumbass to me, but it was just all lighthearted. He was like, get away from there. Like, it was a funny moment in time. That was a funny moment, and we just started cracking up laughing after I like walked back, and he was just like, what are you doing? And we just started laughing and joking about it, and it's still like a joke between us two. Not that I haven't heard that joke in a while or heard that story in a while, so that's why I didn't bring it up last podcast. And then he has some pictures that he sent me of us walking in the woods, one of our recent hikes, so I'm going to put that here. And yeah, it's just crazy how beautiful like the trout run, like I was explaining last podcast, how beautiful Trout Run is. It's just crazy. There's like little mini waterfalls and stuff. And yeah, the trail's just really pretty. There's a lot of curves. There's a lot of rocks that you can walk up and climb. So again, go back to Kids Exploring. Look up, it's a Kids Exploring playlist. It's about like maybe 13, 14, 17 videos, under 20 videos I have up there that you'll get a very good idea of the landscape of the woods that I walked around in. So there's like two big rock formations that you can go up on and kind of be at. One of them is the closest to my house, or closest on the trail, and so that's the area that I go to the most, or that we went the most. And I don't know, I'm so bad with like height and measurements, so I can't give you the exact height or how tall it was, but it was definitely at least maybe like 50 feet tall. And so it was pretty tall. Like if you look down, it was pretty ways up. And so like if you look, like it was a pretty forest ways down. And there's this like little nook or little like hole that like the dirt like leads into, that, which is pretty cool because it's like part of the mountain, or like, okay, so basically Trout Run is like a valley, and so like there's mountains on either side of it, and so like this rock is like just rock, and basically the valley is like leaves and trees and stuff and dirt, but sometimes there's like rock formations that like pop out that is completely bare. It's been washed away from dirt, etc. over the years, thousands of years. But like this like rock formation is really cool because like you can climb up, and some parts are dangerous, but there is a little trail that you can walk up, and like the dirt from like above the valley, like it's this rock formation, maybe like another like few hundred yards up until you get on the like very top of this valley. But like this rock is probably halfway between the valley, or halfway on this valley. And so like the dirt came into this like little area, like there's this like little nook in the area in the rock. And so people usually camp there. Like it's like big enough for like a tent and a few people to like just camp at. And there's this always like constant fireplace there, or campfire like area where it's like a rocks, like I explained earlier, that I have at my house or at that house. But it was like a rock formation and probably like a 3-foot hole, maybe not that deep. That's pretty deep. It's probably like a foot deep, and people just have like fires there and just like talk and stuff. And it's a party, like a little party area too. Not huge party, like party as in like 4 or 5 people like go there, have a fire and drink a few beers. And it's kind of sad because like people just litter there and just like leave their beers and stuff. But it's not like, it may be like 2 or 3 beers at a time and then people will come pick it up. But it's, the glass bottles are really cool to see because they're usually older glass bottles, so like a few years, so it's like wear and tear on it. So yeah, that rock formation was pretty cool. And then there's another higher rock formation. It's at least 150 feet up, and not at least like 100, maybe 150 feet up in the air. And I actually threw my GoPro off into the creek. So like right next to this rock formation, there's like on the creek, it's like a little 3-foot like puddle, or like little 3-foot where the creek gets like 3 feet deep and continues. And so me and my one friend who's also in Kids Exploring, he's in every episode. But so we climbed up to the top of this hill or cliff, and it's like as high as the valley, so it's basically flushed with the top of the valley, or one on the other side of the valley. So like we walked all the way to the edge of the this cliff, and we dropped my GoPro off the hill, and it landed in exactly where we wanted it. And it's a really cool thing. It's you can't really see anything because the GoPro's just flipping and it's all blurry and stuff, but it's cool to see it just plop into the creek, because it's like, I tried to do it where the GoPro was facing up, where it wasn't as, and it worked for a couple seconds, but it was just kind of cool to see it drop, and then plop, or you heard like the plop of it, and it like sunk, and then the water was clear enough where you could see all around it, and it was just really cool to see like the bottom of the creek. So that was really cool and fun to do. And then another section, the hill that I was talking about, where my development, everyone used to get down to this trail, at the end of like the hill and the actual start of the entrance of Trout Run, for at least that area, there was this, I think there was like an old like house there, a very, very old, like at least a couple 100 years old house that was just made out of stone, or maybe a cabin, but it was really old. And basically everything was gone, and there was just like a little foundation, maybe like a corner of it, where like you could still see like the stones, and it was just made out of stones, but there's still the stone chimney there. And so basically you could see where the like fireplace was within the house, and like the actual stone like chimney in those days, where it's actually stone and not like the little plastic tubes that we have in modern houses today, but it was an actual like chimney. And like it's fallen, so it's just like maybe a couple layers of rock, and then maybe like the thing that was fell over and that was still left, it was probably maybe like 10 stones high. It was not high at all, and that was still there. And what people would do, you have to wear shoes, and you have to be very careful in this part of the trail, because people, they get drunk and fucking delinquents, whatever, you know what I'm trying to say, would drink there. Then they would throw the bottle at this chimney thing that was broken, and then there'd just be a bunch of broken bottles. One time, me and Daniel, the kid that's in Kids Exploring, we one time went down, and then we found a couple bottles just laying next to the chimney that wasn't broken yet. And then we were like, oh, let's see how many we can find, and let's do something weird with it. We didn't want to break it because like we didn't want to have like even more glass all shattered around. But we were just trying to see how many we found, glass bottles we found, and there's this like maple tree, no, not maple, mountain laurel, like little branches or bushes area. This bush here, wherever I'm going to put it, there's like a little like bush area of this. It's also in Kids Exploring, and I have all of this. I have this entire experience on Kids Exploring. I don't know which episode it is, so scroll through, you'll find it easily. And we found like 7 or 10, I can't remember the exact number, but we found it over 5, and it was a shit ton of just these green like worn out bottles, and it was probably it looked like antique bottles, or it just didn't look like the regular bottles that you find in everyday liquor stores. So we gathered all these bottles, we like laid it out so we could get like a shot of it for the video. And then Daniel, there's this dead tree right next to like this mountain laurel. I don't even know if that's the correct name. I'll have the title underneath the photo. He climbed this dead tree, and this dead tree, like, it was such a perfect tree to climb because it literally had no branches, and it was probably like a 20-foot tree, but it was basically like a ladder where the branches that used to be there, they were all knocked down, and it was literally just like perfect handles where your foot could be placed, and you could literally just climb it perfectly and easily. So Daniel, I filmed him doing this. He climbed up with like 3 of the bottles. I would hand them to him, and he placed the bottles on the tree branches and stuff. And so we like kind of decorated this dead tree where he just put the dead branches or the bottles on the dead branch, and we put all of the bottles there. Or we only put 3 bottles, and we left the rest of the bottles where we kind of set it up, because he just didn't want to go up and down, because like obviously he can't carry that many with him at one time, and he just didn't want to go up again, because like it was kind of dangerous. So like I also told him like don't do it, as like that's probably the only time, because like I didn't want him to die. But those bottles actually stayed up there a while. There was 3 of them that he put up, like I said, and all 3 of them stayed for at least 3 to 4 years. I don't know if they're still there, but they were definitely there throughout my entire high school like life or whatever. And the only reason I know is because like I go down there often throughout my high school experience. And like, so when he did that, and then like 3 or 4 months forward, so like I would see it like once we go down there, we were like, oh look, it's still there or whatever, every time like we went hiking down there. And then me, my dad, Rachel, and her son went down, and that's the pictures that you saw earlier. It was of that hike, and it was the same hike, and I'm like, the bottles were still there, and it was probably my freshman year of college, probably, is when we went on that hike. So probably like 3 years later, the bottles were still there. So the bottles like survived heavy snowstorms, heavy rainstorms, like survived not a lot of traffic, but a decent amount of people like walked past that area. And they didn't touch it. They probably didn't even see it, because it was, you kind of had to know that, or you had to know that they were there, because it was like up high on the tree. So it's like you had to kind of be like looking for them to realize it. Even though like when you did look there, like it was obvious that they were there, but it was kind of a thing where like if you weren't looking for them, or if you didn't know that they were there, like you wouldn't be able to see them, or you wouldn't be able to notice them, because it's like, one, like people are always looking straight ahead or down, or there's a lot of other things visually that people go to and do in that area. So like the likelihood of someone looking up in that direction, because it was like off the trail a little bit as well, so like no one really saw it, I believe. And like the crazy part is that it survived like all the weather and stuff, which was crazy to me. Another cool thing as well is that there's this tree that fell down across the creek where you can walk across, and that's one of the points where a lot of people walk across to get onto the other side of the creek, because like the trail, it goes on the right side of the creek for a little while, but then you have to cross over, and the trail continues on the left side. So like you have to cross eventually, but because I think the right side eventually leads to a dead end, but you can go on the right for a while before you have to cross to the left. So there's probably like a mile where you don't have to cross. So between that mile stretch, there's a lot of like places where people crossed. Like people make man-made like rock areas or like rock formations where they like grab these big fat rocks and just place them and then place them and place them until they get across the river or across the creek. So it's like they make like these little bridges with these rocks, and my dad and I made a lot of them in our time. And typical kid stuff, like me and my friends used to try to make a dam out of it, and we were a little bit successful, but like we got tired of it and got bored of it, and we eventually just stopped and like continued our own thing. And it was like pretty big creek, so it was kind of, there's not really a point where it was easy enough to block off and make a dam, because like it would just keep going around it, obviously. But like we did try, and it would have to take like an entire day to make it like a legit like dam on that creek. But we tried many times, me and my friends, and even my dad and I tried a couple of times. But so this right at the entrance of the path that leads from my neighborhood down to the trail ground down that hill, right when you get there, like when you walk from off that trail, like when you enter the actual trail run area, there's someone made this fort on the tree, because like the tree uprooted, so like basically just went like that. It didn't snap, so like the roots went up, and this big tower of roots, like probably 6-7 feet tall of just straight roots, because that's how big of the tree it was. And so it was like that big of like a root system, and then there was probably like 3 feet of dirt, because like obviously the dirt went with the roots and stuff, so like there was a hole that was 3 or 4 feet deep. So someone like made a pretty good teepee around it, and then like you could go under it, and like it was pretty cool because it was like 3 or 4 feet down, plus additional like 5 feet because of how tall the roots were. So it was probably like 10 feet in total, where it was just like you could look up and it was like 10 feet tall, where it's just like the teepee, and someone made a fort there, and it was really cool. And Daniel and I added on to it a little bit, but that was there for at least like 5-6 years. That was there for a while. And there's this one, and also people camp in that area a lot too, in that specific area, because it was pretty open, and it was really cool because like it was like a pine tree forest in that section, and it was not big at all. It was only in that area too. There was pine trees, but like we just walked on people like camping there, which was really cool to see. But there's like this universal camp place, again, rocks, a foothold, and like no one messed with it, no one took it away, not even the government, because like the government like comes in and fixes it or whatever. I don't know if it's the government now that I'm thinking about it. I think it's just the local people taking care of the trail and doing those blue marks, but someone was taking care of the trail nonetheless. But yeah, that was a little camping area, again, right when you enter it from my development entrance from down the hill was that area, and it was really cool. It was really peaceful because it was like an open pine forest for a little bit. It was probably 50 by 50 yards. It was not big at all. And a lot of people camped there, and it was just cool that we had that universal campfire. I never had a fire there. Weirdly enough, like if you know me, my family knows, everyone knows that I'm a fire maniac. I'm whatever the word is. Loves fire, loves to create fire. I get that from my dad and uncle. But yeah, I'm gonna run out of time. Bye. There's gonna be a part 3. Look out for that.